This Soonerscoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. Don't miss a moment on or off the field. Make every day a highlight with LASIK at Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop LASIK.
With all that being said, for this next chapter of my football career, I'm going to be chasing SEC championships, chasing national championships, chasing greatness. At the University of Oklahoma.
Congratulations to Oklahoma. Congratulations to the Kreuls. Congratulations to you, Jake, and congratulations. Boomer!
Some very Miguel Chavis energy there. Welcome in Eddie Radosevich, Josh McCuistion down at Houston HQ, George Stoya to my left, your right on the television screen. Oklahoma has done it. They have gotten a commitment from the number 41 player in the country, IMG Academy Edge, Jake Kreul, and certainly when you talk about, the way things have been going in recruiting, some good news finally for Oklahoma on the recruiting scene. Welcome back to another recruiting report here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel. And Josh, let's just get into it. Massive news for Oklahoma today to get the commitment of Jake Kreul from IMG Academy.
Guys, I come on here and talk all the time about, this guy was a guy OU was involved with for a long time. I went back and looked. They offered Jake Kreul on June 26th of 2023. 2 years ago. Like that is an extremely long time in recruiting, especially for an out-of-region guy. There's all these things that would make him tougher to find because this was before he was even at IMG. So Oklahoma has poured a ton of resources into this, a ton of effort. And, I know it's been a tough summer for OU fans, but I think if you just told Oklahoma you can have one guy out of these certain options that were available this summer, I kind of think Jake Kreul would have been the guy they chose. Now, that doesn't make up for everything. I know people are still a little frustrated, but it's a huge win, and it's a step of things kind of hopefully turning back around for Oklahoma.
Josh, how big is it that it came against Texas, too? I know it feels like they were kind of the runner-up in this situation. I know that you had posted some stuff that Texas had kind of made it maybe a little bit interesting towards the end.
Yeah, there's no question that was something over the last week, really. And honestly, it's hard to know how much is born out of people kind of connecting dots where you had when he moved up his decision date. It was supposed to really, the talk was like September, October, and then, it's going to be August 12th. Okay. And I think a lot of people started connecting dots because the same day he made that announcement, he had told our guy, John Garcia, that he wanted to really see, Oklahoma win. He just wanted to see them have some success on the field. And so for him to immediately then turn around and say, okay, I'm ready to make my choice, it's like, maybe he's not going to give OU that chance. So what I think he just did is chose to buy in that Oklahoma's going to get back on track this year. So I think that is obviously huge. Guys, we talked about it in the spring. The two guys they had to have, Bo Bentley and Jake Kreul, they did that. I get it, and I get why that's frustrating. But you're right, George. This is 2 straight years where arguably the top guy on OU's board, OU beats Texas 4 head up. That's a good sign. That's a good win. That's what you want to do. And you're doing it not just at linebacker or safety. You're doing this along the line of scrimmage, which we know is so pivotal to what Oklahoma wants to do. And I think people need to see this is part of the plan. Where OU wants to spend money is quarterback, defensive line, offensive line. Now, they'll do it elsewhere for special players, but I think it's pretty clear those are the spots they're willing to really be aggressive with not only their recruiting, but their NIL.
A significant commitment coming on Tuesday morning for Oklahoma. A couple of housekeeping items. Jake Kreul is the highest ranked commitment in the 2026 class. 2016 is about a decade in the rearview mirror, Eddie. Jake Kreul, number 41 player overall. As you said, Bo Bentley, number 67 currently. Deacon Schmidt just inside of the on-3 300 at 295. He is the 16th commitment here in the class, and it's because of the relationship with Miguel Chavis, obviously. A good job by him in recruiting, Josh, as you noted over the last couple of years, as well as the way that Jake Kreul sees himself in Brent Venables' defense. He talked about that on the Pat McAfee show on Tuesday morning following his announcement. commitment. And here is Jake Kreul talking about his relationship with Oklahoma and how he sees himself in the Sooners defense.
Yeah, I think the number one thing it came down to was trust. I've known that coaching staff for a while. Coach Chavis has been awesome to me. I've known him for such a long time. He's kept the same thing no matter what. I love the defense Coach Venables has. It's super aggressive. They chase TFLs. And the way you get sacks, which is what I like to do, is you got to get them behind in the chains. So playing that aggressive style, that leads to more sacks. I think that was the main thing when it led to making my decision.
Jake Kreul on his commitment on Tuesday morning, and certainly going to be very interesting. And Josh, I want to get your thoughts on just Jake Kreul as a player. I know that he also spoke with Steve Wiltfong. That story's on Soonerscoop.com as well, just in terms of his relationship with R. Mason Thomas. Sees a lot of R. Mason Thomas. I do want to get into that, looking at some of his junior tape from IMG Academy. But first, let us tell you about our good friends over at Homefield, homefieldapparel.com. The platinum boxes are out. We talked about those last week, George. They are out. All you got to do is go to homefieldapparel.com. It's first come, first serve. And of course, Homefield is the premium collegiate apparel brand based out of Indianapolis. They were down here selling a bunch of their items over the past, I guess last year, about this time, about a month's time coming up. But as you can see, the Platinum Box is out right now. First come, first serve, and a lot of really good stuff in there for the Oklahoma fan looking to gear up here ahead of the college football season.
Those hoodies are sick.
You like those?
I like those a lot. Those
I like the old school wagon look that, I think Homefield has kind of become known for.
Vintage.
They're vintage Oklahoma or collegiate gear just in general. So go to homefieldapparel.com and grab your Platinum Box today. Very good. All right, Josh, we welcome you back in. And obviously, there was a reason why everybody was excited about Jake Kreul's announcement on Tuesday. I know that we have a couple stories up right now, but specifically the breakdown, just in terms of what Jake Kreul will be bringing to Oklahoma. Certainly, when you're looking at building in the trenches, he's one of those guys that you can build around on the edge.
You know, Eddie, he talked about it on the Pat McAfee interview where he mentioned people labeling him as a technician. And I don't know how you watch his tape and it's not the first thing you see. He is a guy, regardless of what you're talking about, he's just so advanced for his age. Like, you watch him with some of his spin counter moves. Like, he is one of those rare young defensive ends that has tools, but still has refined his game enough that it's not just about, oh, he's big, he's fast, those kind of things. He's actually already taken that next step of developing his game. He's got counter moves. He has a reaction to what you want to do. And one of the best things I see him do is he's got one, and they actually showed it on the broadcast, where he long arms the guy. Like it might have been the play that just ran here. I was looking up, but he is just so adept, like that one with his hands, where he just breaks the lineman's hands. They can't put him on him, and he moves past the blocker. Like, he looks so ready to help. Like, and I think that's something where, I know the R. Mason Thomas comparisons, kind of come about. I think he's more ready than R. Mason was at the same time. Now, do I know that he's got that same level of burst? Maybe not, but I do. I think he is a guy that, if he comes in, I assume he'll be in at semester. I haven't actually confirmed that with Jake, but I believe that to be true. If he's doing that sort of work, I just don't have a lot of doubt that this is a guy that can help Oklahoma pretty early on.
Josh, you say that. Where is it that he needs to get better over these next few months before he does get to campus to contribute? Is it just, getting in the weight room physically?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it's just natural maturation, George, because you look at the guy, like, he clearly, I mean, IMG is one of the few high schools in the country that has a legit weight program. Like, not only in how they organize it and how they run it, but they have, real equipment, like they can do a lot of the stuff that they do at the college level. We watched David Stone change his body over 2 years at IMG. So that's something that's going to happen. But I think some of it is just letting his body put on weight. Like, because that's the thing. He's 6'2", 223 right now. I mean, that's from the Rivals 5-star back in, I think, early July. So it's not like it's a dated height and weight. He's not the biggest, longest defensive end, but if he can get in that 240 range, again, I think it's more of a matter of he can be a third down guy. He can do some different stuff for you. He can give you, a snap here, maybe 10 snaps a game, something like that, where his motor and his explosion can really play. It's just I don't know if he's ready at this point to be an every down guy, because we know he's going to be giving up 50, 60 pounds to offensive tackles, and that's probably going to be inevitable for a good chunk of his career, but he hasn't yet learned how to totally deal with that situation.
Josh, we're a couple of, I guess, weeks removed, and this was something that George and I were talking about on the way home from, it was one of the post-practices about a week ago when we were talking to Miguel Chavis, and, he went into his big spiel about how they're going to recruit high school guys, how they want to develop, and I just remember back thinking to when Brent Venables was putting together his defensive staff, brings in Todd Bates, obviously the accolades were there. It was a little bit of a risk bringing in Miguel Chavis as well. Maybe time to give him some flowers. We saw development with Ethan Downs. We've seen R. Mason Thomas emerge as one of the great pass rushers in the game of college football currently. And then obviously what they have kind of in the cupboard. We talked to Danny Okoye yesterday. You can see our breakdown with him on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel from the practice report that George and I did on Monday, as well as, obviously PJ Adebore. Taylor Wine is going to be in that developmental role going into a bigger season, a bigger responsibility this season in the defensive end room. Then you have Jake Kreul today, and obviously he gets all the flowers with the number 41 player in the country. He joins Daniel Norman as well as Matthew Nelson in that 2026 defensive end group. But just kind of your overall thoughts on Miguel Chavis. This seems like maybe one of his bigger wins in being able to land Jake Kreul today.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie, you look at the present, the foreseeable future. You talked about Okoye, Taylor Wine, some of the younger guys in the program. And then you also look at, his current recruiting class. Daniel Norman, one of the highest ranked guys in the class. Jake Kreul, the highest ranked guy in the class. And, a guy in Matthew Nelson that I know they like the upside of. So there's probably no position group on campus right now that seems more certain of where it is and where it's going than defensive end. Miguel Chavis deserves a ton of credit. I mean, and that's something, I think even when he arrived, it was pretty clear he could recruit. Like, because he immediately hit the ground running with R. Mason Thomas and some of those other guys and kind of trying to stabilize some of the other recruitments they were in on. It was clear he could connect with guys. But now we're starting to see him develop and Danny Okoye starting to come on, Taylor Wine pushing for a starting job. All these guys where you're like, okay, this is all coming together for him. So I couldn't agree more. Maybe the only room I could even sort of make a case for is probably safety and the depth, the youth. Like, there's a lot of good talent there from the starters on down. But again, guys, with the exception of quarterback, I don't think there's a single argument to looking at this recruiting class and saying, okay, they've done what they needed to do. That case is pretty much closed. And again, for him to land three guys that I think all have real upside, that's huge for Oklahoma.
George, that was something that we talked about coming out of the Miguel Chavis interview session at post practice, was just the fact that you spent a little bit of time around the guy. You can easily see why he has that relationship with some of the younger guys, and obviously the way that it's affected him in the recruiting trail.
Yeah, and I think that you look at his room and the talent he's acquired, like, Josh mentioned it, but you're talking about a lot of 4- and 5-star guys. And then you even have somebody like, an R. Mason Thomas or Ethan Downs, who maybe, they were, nicely rated guys, but maybe not the highest of guys. And they've, turned into guys that obviously R. Mason's going to be an NFL draft pick. Ethan Downs was better than I think some of us anticipated.
Sure.
And then you look at this year and it's like Danny Okoye, what can he become? PJ Adebore, Taylor Wine, right? Like, I don't know. I think Miguel Chavis has done a really good job and should be in that discussion of, is he the best recruiter OU has on staff right now?
Lastly, Josh, just in terms of the Jake Kreul stuff from me, never a bad thing to continue to recruit IMG Academy. I think it kind of speaks for itself, right? Being able to have those inroads. You had Jaden Jackson, you have David Stone already on campus, and that's going to continue now with somebody like a Jake Kreul.
Well, yeah, and you look at the roster. I mean, Eddie, we watched Max Jones, the offensive lineman that camped at OU, picked up an offer. He's an IMG guy that actually is from Louisville, so he knows Michael Fasusi. Then, the big news of Oklahoma Preps this summer, Joseph Graves moving down there. I've heard he's been really good so far through some of their summer work. So, yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say I'm going to catch an IMG game this year and see Jake, see Joseph Graves, see Max, and again, a dozen other guys that are OU level players. I mean, that's just IMG is a crazy situation. And guys, it used to be, and I think that Brent Venables and his whole staff deserve a lot of credit. IMG used to be a place where OU targets went to die. Like they weren't going to end up at OU. They'd go somewhere else. OU's done a good job down there. Really, I don't know if it's making the staff comfortable, but they just have done a very good job cultivating that and making IMG not a 4-letter word for OU fans. Like, it really is a place where they can go and they can win recruiting battles.
The crazy thing, and I just realized this looking at IMG's national team schedule, at the First Academy in Florida coming up on Friday. First game coming up on Friday for Jake Kreul and company. Just looking at their schedule, it's a national schedule, I think is probably the best way to say it. Hoover, Alabama on there, as well as Mandarin, Florida, Venice, Florida, Central Alabama, Coronado, Nevada is on there on September 13th. They have... Damn, I didn't realize they played so many games. 12 games on a high school schedule. So plenty to see. And as you said, I'm sure that you're going to be getting down to Bradenton at some point here over the next couple of months to see Jake Kreul and company take part in his senior season. Obviously, a number of guys, as you mentioned, here on into the future, particularly Joseph Graves. That's good to hear on him transferring down from Booker T. Washington. A lot of good. Now we got to get into a little bit of the bad. Oklahoma loses out on Davian Groce on Monday afternoon. He commits to Florida. And Josh, to say that this was a final last-second decision probably be painting the picture accurately. This came down to the final moments before Davian Groce made his announcement on Monday, and Oklahoma obviously loses out.
I mean, guys, and I hate to go back to Jake, but man, OU fans needed this win. Like, they needed it bad. It's because it hasn't just been, they didn't get this guy. They lost that guy. It's been last second, like, heartbreaking losses where somebody just came in and caught him at the last second. You can go all the way back to Tavian Branch,
sure, Jacob
Eberhardt a month or so ago, obviously yesterday with Davian Groce. But that's been the story where OU has just, I know there's a lot of ways people can feel about this. I think people have this idea that Oklahoma's didn't get Davian Groce because there was a set number and they wouldn't move from it. I don't think that's the case. I think they have numbers they want to live within, and for the right guys, they'll move the sticks a little bit and those kind of things. But they also realize that they have to plan for the long term. This isn't just about, let's get this guy, and then next year the next wide receiver recruits were like, why am I not getting the same money Davian Groce did or whatever? You can't just live like that. And so I think that's the interesting push and pull of the situation where we know OU needs wins. They need them now, but you've got to play the long game. And I know how frustrating that is for fans, but I think it's ultimately the right call.
Josh, is there any idea of what direction they might go at wide receiver now?
Yeah, I mean, again, guys, I think back to 2 or 3 months ago, we're like, well, we don't know who it'll be at receiver, but it's going to turn out good. And now we all sit here and watch this situation where it's just obviously like Jaden Pettit's another one of those guys that seemed like OU had and lost him at the last minute. So it's been tough, and it has. Now, last week they made an offer to Braden Allen from Lafayette, Louisiana. I've talked to Braden a little bit. I expect him to take an official visit for the Illinois State game, the season opener. I think that's pretty telling that they wouldn't just save it for the Michigan game, because we know it's not like OU is going to have a huge list of official visitors for any week this season, because most of that stuff's already been covered. But what I can say is, like I said, I think that's very telling. He's currently a Tulane commitment. But I would expect if that visit goes really well, Oklahoma is going to be in a very good position for him. He talked about, for those that don't remember, he came up in the spring and visited for a spring practice, was around the team. OU clearly stayed in contact with him, kept tabs on him. And I think once they decided they were ready, they just made a move. And so, it's not that they don't have a few guys like this that they can move on, but I've said it for a few weeks now. I absolutely think that Oklahoma wants to sit down. They're hoping they start 5-0, 6-0, whatever, and then can go back and have some conversations with some of these guys that were worried about the future and were worried about where things were headed for Oklahoma. Guys, even Jake Kreul acknowledged it a couple weeks ago. I want to see them win. I want to see what they're going to do. But if you can answer that in the middle of the season, there's a few guys that might pick up the phone.
I think just in talking about the wide receiver position too, and I know that Kerry and I were talking about this before we jumped on here, it seems like this is something that you could have, I guess, in a way seen just in terms of Oklahoma's been pretty adamant. They're not going to overpay for a wide receiver, whether they're coming out of high school or let alone even the transfer portal. It's all been out there for people. And I guess there's just maybe not necessarily a miscommunication, but a misunderstanding from fans that they're just not going to do it. So I guess in some regard, I do kind of give Jim Nagy and company credit that they're sticking to their guns in a way. They're sticking to what they've said, that they're not going to do this. And then on the flip side of it, it's kind of like what you said, Josh. And I know that there's a lot of people that, particularly on the Crimson Corner, are upset about the way that recruiting is going right now. Patience, I think, is probably the only thing that you can have, but also acknowledging how big this season is. You go win 8 or 9 games, and all of a sudden I think that momentum is going to turn.
There's a very real world where this feels night and day different 8 months from now. Like in the spring when we're talking about guys setting up their official visits and things are getting real for a lot of these big-time recruits, the Cooper Hackett's, the Caden Pennies, you just go down the list. I think that's all in play, but they've got to go out and answer the bell here on the field because, guys, we've talked about it. If football's having success on the field, it takes care of everything else. All of a sudden, donors are more willing to throw in. Like there's more there for everything. And so I think that is something that can happen, probably should happen. Guys, I keep looking around the league, like stuff going on in the SEC. Oklahoma, I probably should knock on my, my wood desk here, but compared to some of these other SEC schools, it feels like Oklahoma's starting to have a little injury luck that they haven't had in a while.
Oh, God.
So maybe, yeah, I know. I shouldn't even have said it. But
knock it all the wood.
Like Florida's getting decimated right now.
Yeah.
Florida's in all kinds of trouble. So there are a lot of schools having to deal with this, and maybe Oklahoma can bounce back, have the kind of year that their talent, I think, says they should. And if so, I think they believe some people are going to become involved with them again. There's going to be some recruitments that seem closed that maybe won't be.
As it stands now, Josh, at 16 here in the 2026 class, is there a major need right now? Like, is there a position that you would point at and say they have to find a way to, kind of answer this question over the next 3, 4, 5 months, or I guess 3 months really until we get to December in that first signing period?
If you want to move aside from wide receiver, which
Sure.
I think we all can admit that's obviously a huge need, but I do think it's one of the few positions that Oklahoma seems willing to use the portal a little more comfortably than maybe some of the other spots. But to me, offensive line and defensive tackle, they have one defensive tackle and Brian Harris. Now, we can talk about Teron Richardson that I think Oklahoma leads for at the moment, kid out of Hopewell, Virginia. I think Oklahoma's in a really good spot there. But again, we've all seen this. Oklahoma was in a great spot for Davian Groce. They were in a great spot for Jacob Eberhardt. Like, we've seen this story, so you've got to be careful on what you count on. But if you can get to 2, okay, maybe you're okay. Like, maybe you probably still have to get a guy out of the portal, but it's not quite okay, you got to go find a real contributor, a rotational type of guy. So I think that could be weathered. But offensive line, they've got 2 commitments, Noah Bess and Deacon Schmidt. You didn't sign like a huge class the year before. It's a really good class in Foje and Fasusi and the 4-man group that they did sign. But to me, on the offensive line, you should be signing 5 almost every year. Like,
Sure.
because you're going to lose some to the portal, you're going to lose some to, whatever. Like, guys just move on and do whatever they're going to do.
We've seen this story before in 2021 and 2022,
Yes.
and what led to the problems that they had in 24 on the field, right?
Absolutely. And they know this. I'm obviously not saying anything they're unaware of, but you can't repeat that and then hope, the portal is going to get better, because guys, to me, it feels like the portal is getting shallower each year. Like it it seems like schools are doing a better and better job of keeping their own talent, especially at those key positions. So I think offensive line is a huge focus. I know that won't shock anybody to hear from me, but I think they need to hit it at defensive tackle too. Other than that, if you can get 3 or 4 more bodies total at those 2 positions, now you're at 20. Now you can talk about a wide receiver. Maybe if you want to look at another safety, we know they're looking at another linebacker, the Jacob Curry kid from Florida that they also offered here over the last month or so. That's a Northwestern commitment. Then you're in that 23-man range, which is kind of what we always expected. 16's just shockingly small for a program like Oklahoma at this point.
Should note, T-Ron Richardson, his announcement date 2 weeks from today, August 26th, will be his announcement. And we've talked about it. I believe it was on the last recruiting report. Syracuse, OU, Maryland, Virginia Tech, Penn State, the suitors there.
And Josh, I wanted to ask you about T-Ron Richardson and if there's anybody else on the defensive line that maybe they'd be looking at, as well as any names on the offensive line that maybe they could pursue.
With the offensive line, I mean, we've talked about him a lot. Daniel McMorris from Norman North. Again, I think they need another offensive tackle. I think he would come at an NIL price you could stomach. So, like, he's a guy that you don't have to rewrite the book for or do anything. He's a guy that's committed to Minnesota. I think he's a project. He needs time. He's going to need time to develop, but kind of reminds me of like a Logan Howland in that, like, if it all comes together with his size, his length, his athleticism, you might have a pretty good player. So I think people would have to be patient. And I think I've kind of hinted at that before. I think that's kind of the question OU has. Like, are we going to sign this guy, develop him for a year or two, and then when he doesn't start in that year or two, he's going to leave and go play somewhere else? Obviously, that's not what OU's interested in. So I think there's a feeling of, if we know he'd hang around and we know he'll invest his time here, then maybe we've really got something. So to me, that's kind of the rub with him right now. On the defensive line, again, my expectation would be, if they are going to still try and add another piece, which I think they would. I think the 3 defensive tackles following just signing Trent Wilson last year, I think you need 3. And so, or I think you would want 3. I think that's the hope that they could get to that number. Guys, I don't think you're going to see a ton of new names emerge. Maybe that's possible. I think it's like what I'm talking about. You're going to see OU go back to a Tavian Branch, who's probably about to watch Rutgers go 4-8 this year. Like, I think you would have that advantage if you put together a strong year to say, hey, look, we're in the SEC. We had a great year. You could come here. Like, I think you kind of check that question that he might have had off of his mind, where he says, well, I can stay closer to home. I can go to Rutgers. And OU, I don't even know if their coaching staff's going to be there next year. Well, that question gets answered. You have a nice year, and it's a guy we know you liked. So guys like that, I think, could still absolutely come back into play.
Let me write that down real quick. Josh McCuistion, not high on the Rutgers program, and Greg Schiano going into 2025. A veiled shot at our friends.
I think they're at 4.5.
A veiled shot at our friends from Piscataway. We won't let Chris Gotterup know about that. You did mention Daniel McMorris. You put out the Suitor State rankings on Monday. Oklahoma OK Preps getting underway with practice on Monday. Most schools, I believe, are. Mason James, number 1, the wide receiver from Norman North, obviously committed to Washington. Jaden O'Neal, the Florida State commitment, the former Oklahoma commitment, now over at Mustang. DJ Ackerson, linebacker out of Putnam City High School, Kansas State commit, I believe, and then Daniel McMorris, obviously, and Caden Jones, the Oklahoma State running back, rounding out the top 5. Anybody Oklahoma could be looking at that's in this top 50 here in state that could be a option in the 2026 class outside of Daniel McMorris? And I guess just overall, any surprises that you threw in there that maybe people don't know about, but maybe need to keep on the radar, Josh, going into the 2025 football season?
The guy that I think, and again, maybe it's just because of the position they play and I think there's a need there, a guy I really like, and I think I've got him higher than anybody else does, is Aiden Martin, the offensive lineman from Berry Hill that's a Oklahoma State commitment. Now, I haven't talked to Aiden enough to know, like, how firm he is, how solid, like, I'm not going to claim I have. I absolutely haven't. But that's a guy, when you watch him on tape, that looks like a Bill Bedenbaugh guy. Like, he is nasty. He finishes blocks really well. He plays with a lot of attitude. There's a lot there that you would say, yeah, Bill would like that kind of guy. So, and he's, 6'5", and he's listed at 260, but you watch him on tape, and I bet he's more like 285. He's a big kid. So, again, not a guy that's going to blow anybody's hair back as far as like, oh, his ranking's huge or anything like that. But I think he's a quality player. I think he fits what Bill tends to like in offensive linemen. And so I think that could make some sense. But, again, I think Oklahoma's acknowledging it's not a great year in state. There's a lot of good depth. From 1 to 20 are good high school football players that, in the right situation probably could, do something at OU. But are they like difference makers? Are they legit guys? No. And a lot of them, kind of in this model where we're talking about NFL prototypes and Oklahoma wanting certain body types. They're an inch shorter than you want them to be. Okay, they're 40. Instead of running a 4.4, they might run a 4.55. Like, there's all these little things where it's just like, okay, that I see where the hang up is there. But again, yesterday when OU missed out on Davian Groce, somebody asked me, would OU call Mason James? I don't think Mason James would pick up the phone if they called. Or at least wouldn't be that interested. He loves Emmett Jones, but I think, there was a feeling of getting the runaround a little bit from OU. That they were heavily involved and they kind of walked away from him. So I don't blame him for that. I think that just kind of is what it is. And again, I think McMorris makes some sense. And I think beyond that, it would take a guy that maybe OU hadn't had a lot of contact with, because I think the other guys, they kind of know where they stand in OU's eyes.
Makes a lot of sense. You can check out the entire list, 1 through 50, on on Soonerscoop.com. Obviously, Josh has little breakdowns for each player, and you can kind of go through there and see what the state of Oklahoma has. I think it probably not a shot at anybody, probably pales in comparison to the excitement level that will come with the 2027 state rankings. And I think that we've talked about how important the 2027 class is going to be for Oklahoma here moving forward. Just kind of keeping an eye on everybody that's going to be going into their junior season. Obviously, that's going to be important for Oklahoma in state.
Yes.
You got that? You agree, George?
I'm going to do sorry. I know we're wrapping up. I'll have my first top 20 in the 2027 class. I'm doing it earlier than I've ever done it before, just because we've seen so much of these kids. I don't think I'm going to shock anybody to tell you Cooper Hackett's probably going to be pretty high up the board. So, but yeah, it's guys, as I went down the list, it was just like, holy crap. There are guys outside my top 10 that have multiple P4 offers. And that's crazy in the state of Oklahoma.
Josh, real quick, and we'll get out of here, but you mentioned him. It seems like Oklahoma's kind of not so much in the clear for Cooper Hackett, but it does seem like the momentum that was building out of Lubbock, while it's still there, he certainly never committed. He never made any announcement. It would seem maybe that's kind of lessened now. Everybody kind of take a little bit of a deep breath as he begins his junior season.
Yeah, and again, talking to people around him, and I've said it before, some kind of brief conversations I've had with Cooper over various things. I don't think Cooper's in any hurry. I think there are some people that want him to be in a hurry, but I don't think he is. I don't think that's what it's about for him. And again, the kid has a lot of affinity for Oklahoma. He's got a ton of respect for Bill Bedenbaugh. I think all things being equal, I think he'd like to go to Oklahoma. They're probably never going to be exactly equal. It's it's probably a question of how close to, and I hate to say the word for the third time, but how close to even they can become. Like, can they get on fairly level playing field? And if they can, then I think Oklahoma's going to be pretty tough to beat for Cooper Hackett, in spite of all the predictions that are in out there.
And as we saw this morning, just in kind of the wake of the Jake Kreul announcement, I think that Oklahoma becomes a little bit more serious if you can give them some help inside the trenches, inside the offensive line or the defensive line, or at a major skill position like a quarterback. You don't get the Bo Bentley and Jake Kreuls of the world, by just everybody growing up and wanting to play at Oklahoma. There is certainly a play in there from the NIL perspective.
And I just wanted to end this by, Josh, have you checked Jake's Venmo history? Just making sure we're on top of that.
But guys, I mean, we're super worried about this, right? Like, we've never written something stupid on any of our Venmo purchases or
I think
billings,
mine's private,
right? We've all been on the up.
Yeah, I would say, just to, I guess, avoid any further investigations by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I will give a no comment on that moving forward. How about that? All right, that's going to do it. Good for Oklahoma. Plenty of coverage coming on Jake Kreul, just in terms of his commitment, what he means. Josh already wrote a couple stories about that you can find on Soonerscoop.com, and plenty of John Mateer news as well. He has released a statement. We'll be covering that in an instant reaction here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel, as well as some really good stuff coming from Monday with Bill Beatabo and the offensive line. And I'm telling you, Josh, we had high expectations going into the spring for Michael Fasusi. It seems like they just continue to get bigger, both him and Ryan Foje. I know near and dear to your heart on the offensive line.
Yeah, Bill's comments about those guys being unusual was, made my heart sing. Those dudes are unbelievable talents, and to see how well they've taken to everything is pretty impressive.
Really is. All right, Soonerscoop.com, $1. You can join right now. Plenty of stuff, coverage from the high school recruiting side as well as the team side with preseason camp here in week number 3. For Josh and George, I'm Eddie. We'll see you back here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel.